Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us right on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux, news reporter with the Banner Press, welcoming you as always. Joined this week once again by Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you in.
Good to be here, and it sure is a hefty paper this week, Eoin.
We made up for last week. Last week we only had 16 pages. Got to admit, it was one of those ones we coasted a little bit. Boy, did we make up for it this week. We've got about 9 things we've got on our to-do list to talk to you about this week's paper, and that doesn't even scratch the surface, if I'm being honest with you. So let's get going on this. There's only 30 minutes, so let's get into it quickly. First one, Casper, Neepawa Middle School. They had a grand opening and we got it on the front page.
Yeah, they had a grand opening for the new play structure there. There was a ribbon cutting for it previously, but they were still waiting on one piece to come in and get installed, and that thankfully happened just recently. They held the grand opening for that on June 8th. Unfortunately, it was kind of rainy that day, so all the ceremony proceedings were taken inside into the gymnasium and multi-purpose room there, but it was nice. There was some hot dogs and all that for all the students, families, and the sponsors that were invited, and some nice music from the jazz band there. It was a nice event.
That's great, and it's a fantastic culmination of a story that we've been following in the Banner Press for quite some time. We've talked about this project from its humble beginnings, an idea, a concept, a development for the Neepawa Middle School, and to its fundraising efforts, its receipt of grants and support throughout Neepawa and the surrounding area, to its actual creation, the construction of it, the arrival of the items, to where we are today. So it's wonderful to be able to share these types of things with you through these stages, and honestly it's kind of nice after a while to be able to put that chapter to bed. So.
Yeah, it's always good to have a nice sort of closure to long-term stories like this, and it'll be a great addition to not only the middle school but also to the community. Of course, anybody's welcome to go down and enjoy it. So and it looks like a fantastic structure. There's a number of different things there, a few different slides and all of that. So definitely a lot of fun for the kids.
And again, you can see bright and beautiful picture right on the front page. If you're not able to see it here, you can find a physical copy anywhere in Neepawa or surrounding communities throughout the Westman area. Or you can find it. It goes live on our website, mywestman.ca, every Friday morning at about 9 a.m. So if you're not able to get a physical copy of the paper, you can find it online at mywestman.ca. And you talk about just the whole setup of the play structure. I think it's kind of funny, Casper, because, as you know, I'm old. And as someone who is old, I used to, you don't have to laugh that, you were just holding in the laughter there. You were, my hearing's not that bad yet. I can still hear the laughter. But again, I came from a generation that the play structures were essentially a couple parents or a couple teachers or somebody would get some wood and get some metal and just hammer that thing out. And as fun as those things were, they were not exactly safety regulated. You just avoid those rusty nails there sticking out there on the slide, all right?
Yeah, everyone knows where they are. Just shift a little over.
Just shift a little smidge, just a little over there. You're going to be fine. It didn't tear through all the skin. Come on, walk it off.
That was only the first layer.
Like, that's the thing most people don't understand nowadays, that there are certain regulations in place, and people always say, oh, it's a mommy nation, it's a daddy nation, sort of just taking care, just wrapping them all in cellophane and sort of protecting them. But no, that in the case of this, that's a good thing. I mean, this follows all the procedures and regulations, but it still looks like the kids are going to have a whole heck of a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely, it's a lot different than the play structures I had growing up. Going to Hazel and Kellington there, and I'm pretty sure those ones have changed a lot too. But I haven't swum by there recently to take a good look. But I remember both of those there were made of wood, and they had a decent setup there. But this is like so extensive, and it's much more durable material. Of course, with its being made of something that isn't wood, it lasts a bit longer and can endure more weather and all that sort of stuff that these structures go through. So that's really awesome.
Most likely. And again, safety for the kids, that's important as well. I do sort of wish that we'd had it when I was growing up. Then I wouldn't have this divot right here from the play set up in Thompson, Manitoba, but that's for another day. That's another story for another day. It's wonderful to be able to share this story with you in this week's edition of the paper. Another positive one that you were able to track down. You're about the positivity this week, Casper, and we're going to get into some of mine. I'm bringing the darkness a little bit in my articles, but yours is another positive one for our neighbors just to the west in the community of Minnedosa.
Yeah, this is a story that I was very happy to receive and be able to go out and cover. Down in Minnedosa, they got a very generous donation from Cenovus Energy. It was a total of $155,000, and that is going towards the new fire training grounds, which they already have partially set up there, and a new fire truck as well. So absolutely wonderful. They held the announcement right at the fire training grounds, so people who were there got a chance to tour around it and see all the different rooms and all that. And how it's laid out there, and it's an interesting facility there. It's made out of some different shipping containers, and they can sort of adjust it to different scenarios to keep them fresh, so it's not all the same every time they go through. And they can do a number of different procedures there to help them train. Like they even have an obstacle course in one of the segments there, which is pretty cool.
That is an impressive setup, and of course the vehicle as well. I mean, that's also impressive there, and it's so important to be on the cutting edge of these types of fire training and fire department technologies, and Minnedosa has really stepped it up with this, and thankfully Cenovus Energy has stepped it up and helped them out in that way.
Absolutely, yeah. Just sort of hearing them talk about it while I was there, they gave like $20,000, I believe it was, like right out the gate to help establish the training facility. So getting another boost again is just incredible, and it sounds like the fire department has some good plans to build upon the current structure and add to it throughout the years. So that is always wonderful to hear, and helps prepare the teams and the community to better respond to different scenarios and get them dealt with in a proper manner. So that's wonderful.
It's always nice to see the community business, and that's what this is for the community of Minnedosa. It is the community's business. Really step up and support it. Much in the similar fashion as we see here in Neepawa. High Life Foods has many times been very gracious and stepped up and supported community endeavors. I would love to be able to say that that's the story I'm sharing with you next. But as I said a moment or two ago, Casper got all the good news and I got the unfortunate bad news. But again, please remember, it could be worse. I know it's bad, but it is bad for 29 individuals. Unfortunately, layoffs have occurred at High Life Foods in Neepawa. In total, I believe off the top of my head, there were 87 in total for High Life Foods as a company. 29 of those right here in Neepawa. It's always a sad day when people have to sort of lose their jobs. Obviously, different business, but on a day or two after, Bell Media Canada announced nearly 1,400 or 1,500 job layoffs, and the removal. They were closing 6 radio stations and selling 2. So that's another upsetting thing. That's not a local story. I just thought I'd bring that up as well. And as well for High Life, unfortunately, they had to sell off their plant in Minnesota recently. About 1,200 or 1,300 jobs lost there. These are difficult times. Let's not kid ourselves. The global economy is very complex, and it shifts on the other side of the globe, can have ripple effects right here at home, and this is an example of that. changes in the global market when it comes to pork production and pork sales, changes in inflation on a global level. We think we feel it here in Canada, here in Manitoba. Just imagine having to deal with it in Asian nations, in continental areas such as India, China, Korea, the Koreas, and in around the area, because there's a big contingent that shifts over from High Life over into those areas. So they have to deal with those very interesting little dynamics that we, as the average Canadian, let's be honest, we don't know much about it. We don't really delve into it. I'm not saying that, maybe you do, but the average Canadian, for the most part, doesn't really go in on that, doesn't really see it, doesn't see beyond the impacts of their own border. So, but again, 29 jobs. These are 29 individuals. If I was one of those 29 individuals, I still wouldn't be thinking about the fact that this is just 29 jobs. I'd be thinking, this is my job, this is my career, this is my livelihood. So it's a sad day, but it's a reality of business. And I do hope that these individuals, whomever they may be, and we're not going to be sharing names of those individuals. You know how communities are. Rumors always going out, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, but we're not going to do that. Some papers do that, some media do that in the bigger cities, but that's because they're able to, because they are in bigger cities. We are walking into the Safeways, into the co-ops, into the Fresh Marts, and we're seeing the people and we're talking to the people that we're talking about in these stories, both good and bad. We have to, I'll be honest with you, we have to tread lightly sometimes. But we still try to tell the truth, and that's what we tried to do with this story. You can find the story. It is on page 2, page A2. It's a 2-section paper this week of the Banner Press, and it's just like it's a really tough situation, isn't it, Casper?
It definitely is, and this is something you always hate to see, and I imagine it kind of leaves you in a position of, okay, well, what do I do now, right?
Yeah.
So, hopefully they can find something else soon and keep going on that to get through it all.
That's the reality of it as well, because Neepawa, they've established their roots, their families in Neepawa, or maybe they've already been well established in Neepawa. And what do you do then? Try and put yourself in those shoes. What would you do then? That's why I bring up the Bell Media thing. As a representative of the media, I've been working at this for nearly 20 years now. Coming up very shortly going into my 20th year doing this. And the landscape for media has changed. The view from the average citizen towards media has changed. And the way media is treated on a corporate level has most definitely changed, and not for the better. I mean, these changes at Bell are a perfect example of that. 1,400 people laid off, not knowing what they're going to do. Like, whether it's 29 or whether it's 1,400, it's something you never want to have to deal with, and I feel bad for each and every one of those individuals. But that's, again, like I said, these are the types of stories sometimes we don't want to talk about them. Sometimes we don't want to cover them. We're going to be talking about a story in next week's edition, a breaking story as it occurs right now, a vehicle accident in Carberry that is on the go right now. New information is coming through as we speak that we're going to be covering in next week's edition of the newspaper. And it's going to be a difficult coverage. It's going to be a difficult discussion, but that's what media has to do. They have to bring the truth to you. Even if it's something you don't want to hear, and even if it's something we don't want to share. But that's the way it is. Let's move on, though. Let's get into a little more, I don't know if it's positivity, but it's nice to hear that some progress is going to be made. And it comes from the town of Neepawa Town Council and Administration. They've revealed a few details on some road work that's going to be happening. Not just patching, not just that temporary stuff, but actual full-scale repair work is going to be done in a few sections of town. It's going to be happening most likely over the next, they haven't announced a specific date yet, but before the snow flies. They're optimistic very much before the snow flies. $234,490 plus GST is going in towards some major work. It's going to be along Stonehouse Street, a portion of Mountain Avenue, from 8 to the 1st and 1st Avenue. I believe just south of the highway there, I think on 1st. God, that might be in and around my area. God, I might have to sort of do some strange commutes around to get to work for a week or so.
Potentially, yeah. It's going to be good to see this work get done, though. I know there's some rough patches out there around town, so this will help sort of smooth things over. And well, it's always good to have fresh pavement down.
Most definitely. And again, like, I've talked to a lot of people about this over the last few months, about the roads, and it's an expensive endeavor. Everything right now is such an expensive endeavor, especially when it comes to upgrading and maintaining for municipalities. Things that cost $10,000 even just 5 years ago now cost $14,000, $15,000, $16,000. Same thing with volunteer-run and operated organizations. Whether it's the Yellowhead, the Neepawa Titans hockey team, Arts Forward, or the curling arena. It's all this stuff. It's getting more expensive to keep those doors open. So that's just unfortunate. And it's the same thing with the roads. I mean, we'd all love beautifully paved roads. That's, who wouldn't? But they got to do a little bit at a time, and at least this is an example of that. One little bit at a time, I keep saying that until my suspension gets blown out from a pothole. then you're gonna hear a real good episode of this show.
Then it'll be darn you.
Oh, but again, fortunately, we haven't reached that point yet. But stay tuned. Another little bit of work that the council did most recently is they had to do a little bit of a bylaw change. And don't worry, this doesn't mean there's going to be a bunch of skyscrapers in downtown Neepawa anytime soon, I promise you that. But it does mean that the most important project on the go right now, the new Neepawa Health Center, will be able to maintain its vision and maximize its capacity and its space. There's certain bylaws in that certain new constructions, they only had a maximum of 45 feet in terms of the build height. They had to make this alteration. They've done it for other buildings, obviously, but it's still on the books. So they made this one alteration to the bylaw to allow for the health center to be able to go from 45 feet to 65 feet. The reason is, obviously, in new hospitals, the size of the stories and all that are mandated to have a little extra space for equipment and things along those lines. So they've made that change. So the hospital is going to be able to sort of be the 3 stories as they planned, a little extra in there. So yeah, because again, I mean, story on average is about 10-ish feet.
Right.
So you'd figure, 45 feet, that's plenty. But no, you need that little extra. There's a lot of tall patients, essentially, that they're expecting. 7-footers, 7, 8-footers, the norm.
I better do some growing. Well, I don't really plan on making a trip to the hospital, but...
Well, if you do, you don't got to worry about bumping your head.
Yes, that's true. No, it's great that they were able to get this put through to allow the hospital to continue with their vision. It's just awesome that this really ambitious project is going to be able to go through as planned, and so it can keep up capacity. And of course, as Eoin said, it takes room to get in different equipment into each room, so they'll be able to do that without any worries.
All right, let's from health to art right now. We're going to do a seamless segue into a new exhibit that's over at Arts Forward. And I had a chance, Casper, you got all these pictures, and I was able to go through some of this work. And in actuality, I was just down in Arts Forward a little earlier today for a story that will be in next week's edition of the paper as well. And I was able to see them with my own eyes. It was like, wow, these are so impressive. And even more impressive is the story behind the individual and the individual sharing this art with us. So.
Yeah, this was a wonderful thing once again. I was given the tip from Eoin, of course, at Arts Forward, that this was happening. But in June, on Thursday last week, a new exhibit opened from Filipino Carberry artist Clemente Villamayor Jr. Wonderful person. I had a great talk with him, just sort of in general, but also about his art and his experience. And I fit in as much as I could, but definitely go down there and take a look. There's a little bit of a blurb about him and his family there that you can read a bit more in depth into. And take a look at his art as well. Just going through it when I was down there and watching the kids listen to him talk and go through the exhibit themselves, because there were student tours there that day. It was fascinating. He has a wide sort of array of subjects that he's got on display there that use different mediums like watercolor, stencil. I believe he used some markers for some, and even just recycling old materials. Like there was one piece I'm pretty sure used Lego blocks, paint cans that would have otherwise gone to the dump or something like that. Cardboard for a lot of them, and sticks that he sort of whittled away at to make a bit smoother and all that, and painted them over to make different structures and that sort of thing. And just, wonderful work, so varied, and great colors, honestly. Definitely take a look at it for yourself and, see what you take away from it.
That's the interesting thing, Yup. You bring a very interesting point to that, Casper, a lot of artists will they'll vary to a degree, but they have a certain style that is sort of transcendent in everything they do. But in this one, there was so much different, from abstract to individuals, to painting, as you said, to actual physical sculptings like there. It was a real hodgepodge, and I use that in a very positive way, of art there. And it really just challenges you as a viewer.
Yeah, it really feels inspiring kind of the second you walk in there, just sort of the array of different things that he's worked with and put together for these pieces. Things from parodies to his own take on like a DeLorean, for example. He's a big fan of Back to the Future. My household is actually a big fan of Back to the Future as well. So
your household has been educating you properly,
absolutely.
Casper.
Yeah, so definitely take a look at the story, learn more about this wonderful artist and his background there, and go down to Arts Forward and take a look for yourself as well.
Always have appreciation for the classics, whether it's art or Michael J. Fox movies. All right, speaking of art, but in a different variety, on Wednesday of last week, went down to the Yellowhead Hall because there was an exhibition, as it were, or as the people in the know call it, a house show, for Canadian Wrestling Elite. That is a Winnipeg-based wrestling promotion that does tours throughout the Prairie Provinces. They've been doing it for about 14 or 15 years now. And they did a show in Neepawa. It's the first time they've actually been in Neepawa in quite some time. I think they usually will do their shows in Gladstone, so I think they wanted to see what the market was like here in Neepawa. And there were 5 matches on. And I was there, and I was able to get a bunch of pictures from it. Again, that's why you need to pick up a physical copy of the Neepawa Banner Press, as well NCSA portal, which you can find online in Facebook. They took a bunch of pictures. Always appreciate their work. Their camera work is so creative, and I have no problem saying this. Quite honestly, they're better at the camera work than I am. That's why I very prominently featured theirs, because they're able to capture the emotion, they're able to capture the moment in a way that I honestly wish I could. But I'm more of a word guy as opposed to a picture guy. But I'm very appreciative that they are very open in letting us share their work with you, and hope to be able to do so well into the future. But again, wrestling is not everybody's cup of tea. I used to love it as a kid growing up in the 80s. That first wave of wrestling, I remember WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan and all that. I was maybe about 9, 10 years old and got into it. I thought it was real. It looked real to me, but what did I know? Quite honestly, I thought G.I. Joe and Transformer cartoons were real as well. That shows what kind of idiot I was as a child. Bert and Ernie were real too. Actually, yeah, no, Bert and Ernie are real. They are real.
They are,
Never mind
yeah.
if you've got kids watching, they're real. So, but wrestling obviously predetermined. But when you see it that close, you can feel the impacts of it more. I mean, there's a little bit of spring to that ring they set up, but not as much as you would think, actually. So, and I remember hearing this in a documentary once. Some wrestler, I don't know whom exactly, said if it looked like it hurt, it did. And yeah, I could sort of believe that. So it's something I wouldn't want to do, just the physical toll of it. But again, it's a brand of entertainment. And people who always look down on wrestling, oh, you watch that stuff, what's the big deal? People always say it's the equivalent of a male soap opera. And again, I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, you go to movies to be entertained. You go to a wrestling show to be entertained. What's the difference? You go to a theater, you go to a musical to be entertained. It's all the same. It's just this one has a little more sweat. A little more sweat and baby oil. So. But hopefully Canadian Wrestling Elite was a very successful show, and hopefully they're able to come back and do another one in Neepawa in the future.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Of course, would add another sort of attraction for people to come and visit and enjoy the town.
You were out on the weekend to an event at Kinsman Courts too, were you not?
Yeah,
because we got a couple submitted photos, but you also got some photos in there as well, and it looked like it was a whole heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, so Kinsman Courts 2, they held a bit of a summer party over the weekend. They had a petting zoo there with a variety of different animals. I think one of them was a donkey. And so people were able to go down there, look at all the animals, and enjoy the nice weather that we had that day. It was actually quite a wonderful day. Take a look inside, and it looks like they had an ice cream truck there sometime later on in the day. I was there pretty early, so I like probably just missed it, but it looks like it was a wonderful time.
Still fun nonetheless. We're coming to the end of our show once again. There's so much more we could have talked about. 20 pages in our A section, and our B section is our annual graduation. 20 pages of showcasing graduates from Neepawa, Minnedosa, Gladstone, Carberry, surrounding areas. Congratulations to each and every one of those individuals that accomplished that diploma. We always like being able to share that special day with you, the reader. And there's so many other things we could be talking about as well. Stories in regards to obviously the incident in Erickson last week, Ken Waddell's column, the Splash Park Committee in Carberry. We didn't even have enough time to talk about the $36,000 raised, and that's why you need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press. There's so many other stories that are so important locally that you need to know a little bit about. So you can pick up a physical copy of the paper anywhere in Neepawa or surrounding communities, even into Brandon. We drop off to some very selective businesses in the Brandon area. And like we said, if you can't get a physical copy of it, you can always find it. It goes live on mywestman.ca every Friday morning at 9 a.m. So again, Casper, great. Thank you very much. This is one of those papers I think that we'll be looking back on at the end of the year feeling pretty good about.
Absolutely great paper, and great to be here again on the show, and I look forward to another one.
And once again, thank you for tuning in. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So you're to blame. You're to blame for me running on as I do. But we do appreciate it. It's a little bit of fun every once in a while. If you have any story suggestions or ideas, you can always contact us at news@neepawabanner.com or at 476-3401, the number we can be reached at. Once again, that's news@neepawabanner.com. So thank you as always, and we'll see you again next week on the story behind the stories.